Okay, hi and welcome to the Writing Lounge. Today it's Resume Refresh with expert tips from Lauren Wooster of the Office of Career and Professional Development at the University of Redlands. And I'm sure when I introduce Lauren, she will tell you all about some of the resources that they have over in the Office of Career and Professional Development. They've done amazing things there in the last couple of years. And as alumni or current students at the University of Redlands, you are invited to make use of these resources. They're great, and they're great over there. So let's see what we have here. For those of you who are new, and I see a couple of new people, this is the Writing Lounge, where we tackle one writing or communication problem at a time. We have a couple of these now. I've taken a couple of months off. I took the month of August off, and we're starting up in September again. And we're working with just, again, one topic at a time. We try to figure out why we get into trouble on those topics. And I try to give you 2 or 3 or 4 ways to push past that trouble and really achieve what you want in your writing projects. So we've got a few coming up. I'll tell you about them. But you can always find out what's upcoming at redlands.edu/writing lounge. And I am also posting some of the webinars there so you can actually catch up on a recording if you'd like. Okay, there's Addie, like that, tossing the phone around. I'm Allison Freiberg. I am professor of communication in the School of Business at the University of Redlands. And I teach leadership communication and consulting, critical thinking. And for those of you who may or may not know, I actually am the associate director of our international programs in the School of Business, where we do short-term study abroad trips for working professionals, and anyone's welcome. So we're getting going again in 2022. And if you want to know more about that, let me know, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn and tell you all about it, because it's pretty hard to get me to be quiet about that because I like it so much. Now, in the Writing Lounge today, as you know, it's a resume refresh. And next time, as a follow-up to it, we're going to work on job search cover letters. And that's going to be on Wednesday, October 13th at noon. They're always at noon, and I'll record that so you can get to that if you want. And then after that, on Wednesday, October 27th, the dreaded introductions, conclusions, and abstracts. So if you want ideas on how to do good introductions to your writing projects, good conclusions, and how to write an abstract, then just come on by. Again, everything you want to know is at redlands.edu Writing Lounge. Okay? And with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen, and we're going to get to the stuff you came here for, which is to hear from Lauren about resumes. So, Lauren?
Thank you, Allison. Nice to meet everyone today. My name is Lauren Wooster, and I'm the Associate Director in the Office of Career and Professional Development. And I focus on our career strategy and integration. And so I work with faculty members to bring presentations or resources into the classroom and kind of help you think about what you might want to connect with to figure out your next step. I have a presentation for you today, but I wanted to introduce myself before I swap over to that. I'm going to turn my camera off, and as we go through, feel free to drop any questions in the chat. I will have a few times that I might even ask for your participation as well, so go ahead and put your answers in the chat when we do that section. All right, just a moment. Yeah, Allison, if you could give me a thumbs up when we see the first slide there. Great. All right. So, yep, we're talking about resume refresh today, and I'm going to walk you through kind of what we're looking at. We're going to think about, showing some recruiter research and what they're actually looking for, and that can help you figure out what is the most impactful piece to put on your resume. We're going to spend some time on style, but also spending a lot of time on content. It's kind of like an interview, right? When you walk in the door, you sort of show your first impression. but it's really about the content of the way you answer interview questions that leaves that lasting impact that hopefully gets you hired. And so on a resume, it's quite similar. We're going to talk about the style and we're going to talk about the substance. All right. Yeah. And then it's really needs to reflect you. So I'm going to go over a pretty basic way to create, a clean line resume, and then you may vary that on your own, but we'll make sure you know the essentials. So whatever reflects you is really reflecting that great content you have to offer. All right. I'm starting with the purpose of a resume here. So it should highlight your education, training, skills and abilities, and relevant experience. The two words that really help guide your resume are relevant and recent. Certainly high school is probably far gone from your resume. If it's not, probably take it off unless you're applying for a job at that school. Your undergraduate may absolutely still be relevant there, but you want to make sure that you're going to list things in reverse chronological order. So you should have that school of business degree up top. The purpose of it also is a marketing tool. So it, again, like I mentioned, it's creating a favorable first impression. It also offers a personal account of who you are and what you've accomplished relative to the specific position. The Obviously you want up-to-date contact information, and having been on a lot of different reviews for jobs, I will tell you it is very common that people forget to update their new phone number or their new email. Perhaps you're using a personal email that just isn't very professional, right? Maybe you built it in your undergrad, and now you've had years of work experience. It's probably time to create one with just your name that's very simple and not confusing. And make sure that's updated. And then again, I think it's important to know in the trajectory of the job search process, your resume is going to secure you an interview. It is not going to get you the job. So I hear that stress from students quite often when working with them of, okay, I have this resume and everything is writing on this resume. Your resume is that first step that gets you to the interview, and then that interview is that step that gets you to the job. If you are applying and you're having any breakdowns in any of those sections, then we can really think, okay, where do we need to intervene? Do we need to refresh your resume, or are you getting lots of interviews, and do we need to focus on those interviews? It's extremely important to target your resume. So I know a lot of you have a ton of work experience, but if you've been operating on the same resume, not updating it consistently, then it's not really going to hit your audience the way you want it to. So when we think about targeting a resume, and this may sound tedious, I definitely get that feedback a lot, right? But if you are one of many applicants in a pool, you want to make sure you have the right keywords, that you're speaking to the audience at hand. So if you're applying for a marketing position versus a management position, your keywords are going to look a little bit different because you're speaking to different skill sets that you have. So ask yourself, what qualifications are needed. When you look at a job description, you can even highlight, okay, green, I've got these skill sets. I want to make sure they're on my resume. Yellow, I have some great transferable skills for this. So I want to make sure I pull those transferable skills out. And then also, you might highlight things in red that you're like, I don't have that yet. How do I do that? And then you can do some research, talk to some people in the field, and think about how could you improve on those skills. All right, so I talked about the most relevant and recent experience listed first, oddly enough, in the agenda page. But you do want to follow that. So thinking about it in reverse chronological order, most recent to past. And then there are some ways that we can play with titles and sections so that you can really highlight the most relevant stuff, even if it isn't the most recent items. And then the standard resume is one page. That can be infuriating for those of us who have had a lot of work experience and we have so much more than one page to put down. But I just want you to remember, it's very common to have LinkedIn attached to your resume. Many of you might even be applying for your next job through LinkedIn, where it pulls that information so you can see this history, and your resume is one piece of the puzzle. You're often going to be writing a cover letter, and again, you've got a cover letter workshop coming up soon, so I would encourage you to attend that as well and think about these as a package deal. The resume is a great history of your work and experience, and the cover letter gives you a narrative to explain why you're a good fit for that position, and it helps you target even more. And so again, if you have just one stock resume, you can send it out to 100 places. You might get like 1 or 2 hits because it happens to fit. But if you have a targeted resume, maybe 5 different versions that you're sending to 5 different jobs, you're going to be much more likely to move forward in those pools because you've made a clear direct fit. And that doesn't mean 100% different resume. It just means tweaking some things, changing maybe the qualification you use to describe your work experience, maybe reordering things in your work experience on your resume so that whoever is reviewing it sees your value right off the bat. All right, so quick
Hey,
quiz.
Lauren.
You can go ahead and drop in the chat here. Yeah.
Hey, Lauren, I just wanted to just echo what you said on that the last slide. And I've been on hundreds of hiring committees, and the ones that
Mm-hmm.
always speak to me are the ones that feel targeted. You know, we're
Yep.
and so I just wanted to echo you on that one.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. And apologies for my small barking dog in the background. Um, uh, yeah, I agree. It just shows that you've done your research, and it shows that you value the time and the energy of the whole process. And so to give some scope of, why targeting is effective, I have a couple questions here to think about. So go ahead and put your, I'm glad you love small barking dogs. There's, randomly a car on my street. So there is, okay, we're just going to do this. Put your answers, A, B, C, or D, in the chat so I can see what everyone thinks. So the first question here, oops, if I can get back here. How much time does the typical employer spend looking over your resume? So your options are A, B, C, or D. Yeah, we got a bunch of A's. B. Okay, A and B. Good, you're split there. Okay, so it is B. The typical recruiter is going to look at your resume for about 5 to 7 seconds, and that may seem like no time at all, but that will absolutely be enough time to say, is this an error-free, good-looking resume that I can actually read, and are there some of the keywords or concrete requirements I'm looking for? And this will also be explained with this next question here. So what is the average number of applications per jobs? A, B, C, or D? Got C's, B's, in about 1,000. Yeah, it really varies by field, and that is something that I've definitely had discussions with before. I'm not sure exactly what their average comes from, but 118 is the average from this particular study about it's by a company called The Ladders, and we have a tagline for them in a second. But so if you have 118 or maybe 1,000 resumes coming across your desk, you are absolutely going to spend 5 to 7 seconds, and you're going to end up with a yes pool that is going to work for you because you have a high number of applicants, right? So your job is to get your resume in that yes pool. Something I don't go into this in this presentation as much, but one of the biggest ways you can support yourself in getting into that pool is by networking with people in the industries you want to go into and in the specific companies you're looking into. If you have someone who's willing to say, yep, I'm familiar with their work and they're great, like please take a look at their resume, then that is going to get you a lot closer. It doesn't guarantee anything, of course, right? But if a recruiter who has tons of applications can have suggestions about who would be a good fit, then they're going to pull those, and they're probably going to take that time to look over again. Yes, absolutely. I'm glad that there are networking opportunities in the school of business, and I know you can capitalize on those. And we're always happy to help you connect with alumni in our office as well. Okay, so we're going to do an activity here, and I'm going to explain this diagram first. So this is, again, a study from the Ladders, and they tracked recruiters. It's like a software, and they actually could track the eye movement of recruiters as they reviewed a resume. So here's one on the left, here's one on the right. This, I know this is a little bit of a small graphic, but what you can tell right off the bat is this resume is very long and it kind of reads like a book, like it's a paragraph. It's going to be hard to get through. And so you see they kind of taper off right around here. And that could be two things, right? That could be they found the golden nugget they needed up here and they didn't need to read the rest, right? But most likely they kind of scanned through and were like, okay, I'm done with this resume. There's too much bulk down here. I don't need to look through it. Probably not going to make it into the pile. This one, you can see there's some more movement. Where it's red, they lingered a little bit longer. So there's some very distinct sections. We can't tell how great those sections are word by word, but we can tell that it's clearly delineated what section is what. And they're getting down here and they're hovering on education. That might be a core component. So if it's a core requirement that you have a master's degree in business, and you want to make sure that you're going to put that up at the top so they get what they're looking for right off the bat. At any rate, we're going to have a chance here in about 5 to 7 seconds each to look at a couple different resumes. And granted, it goes by quickly. You might be on a small screen. I know I'm on my little laptop. You're not looking so much for substance here. You're looking for what is appealing to your eye. So just take a look. I think there are 6 of them. So kind of keep in mind the numbers as they go by and see which one is something you would want to go back and look at. You could even take the name down or put the name of the person in the chat. So we're going to go ahead with that. So like this one would be, Jane Doe is the name. And Jamie Doe, it's very similar. Jesse Kendall. James Doe. Donna Kim. Oh, can't see that one on my screen. Markham Road. All right. So go ahead and put in the chat, did any of those resumes catch your eye? What looked like something that you could glean some information from and look at further? Yeah, I like sticking with the same list. So B, okay, so this one, there's a lot of text going on here. Jesse Kendall is usually one that stands out because it has very clear sections. And I like to point these out because this one is kind of visually appealing. However, when you really look at the content of it, there's not a lot going on. There are 3 skills sections. There's skills profile, capabilities, and additional skills, which in my mind are very similar. But so changing the content so it actually works for you, this sort of delineation could potentially work. And, what you would want to think about is what are the words that I would put here that would be impactful. I would not recommend doing a capabilities or skills section that's like this sort of checklist. I like, and this can be challenging, but we'll get to some of the ways that you can work on this. I think it's very important to think about showing, not telling, right? So if you say you're good at advertising and promotions, I don't know that just by you checking this box, right? Or listing it. But if you have a bullet point telling me about the advertising and promotional campaigns that you've worked on and the success of those, and what work opportunity they came with, then I start to get an understanding of your ability to, run high dollar or high impact advertising and promotional campaigns. All right. And then take a note too, we're going to talk a little bit about objective statements. I am not a fan of objective statements, and that is because very commonly what they say is, I'm seeking a position in this type of field. And for me, I know that because you are applying to a job in that type of field, right? So it's kind of a given. It ends up being a waste of space when you have lots of things that you want to be able to tell this employer. You want to make sure that every piece of space you're using is really showing something that's helpful. All right. James Doe is another one. A couple people put. One person tentatively put it with a question mark. James Doe is not bad either. This line you can create with a border box on Word. It's really easy. It's nice and clear. I would say do that rather than just underline professional experience. But yeah, this is certainly fine. I'm going to draw you to references down here. That's a given. You will always give references when requested, so you don't need to reference them or put that you will give them on your resume to save that room for talking more about your honors and awards. Maybe you're, you might have all kinds of things. You might want to put community or board involvement. You might be a member of a local board for a community organization or, for a professional organization. What I would say for
Hey, Lauren, there's a
using,
question. Oh,
yeah, I just saw that. What should we use instead of the
oh,
objective?
okay.
So I don't think you need anything. There's one option. There's a couple options, right? To obtain a customer service and public relations position. I know that because you're applying to those things. You could, and many of you have enough work experience to do this, you could put a professional summary. I would say keep it to like 2 or 3 lines so you're not using a lot of space. But if you can say, I'm the type of professional who has dedicated X amount of years to accomplishing X, Y, and Z, right? If you can make like a nice, clean statement that is connected to the job you're applying for, especially if they're like, requirement 10 plus years of management experience, and you're like, yep, I've done that, then that is something you could highlight in your professional summary to talk about the type of professional that you are. It's a little bit of a branding thing, right? As you work your way through school of business, you want to think about your personal brand. What does the work that you've done, your projects that you focus on during your education, what do those all culminate to say about you? What is the impact you want to have on your next work opportunity? So you could put a professional summary, or you could simply put nothing, and I'll show you what that looks like. You kind of let your resume speak for yourself on that. Okay. And this one is kind of interesting. Down, here, because they've been in this position. First of all, there are no dates, so I'm like, wait a minute, how long have you been in this position? But when you're somewhere, especially for a long time, you tend to do a lot of things. So you could very well have a human resources position where you focus on administration, training, and development. You focus on management. You have a marketing component to your job. I actually delineate my role as associate director that way now. I don't take up the entire page with it because I have a lot more to say, but there are just such a wide variety of components to my role that I think it's easier for other people to interpret what I do when I can give it an extra qualification. Like, here are some of the management things that I've done. So that is something to keep in mind as a possibility, especially if you've been working at one location for a long time and you want to highlight those different areas of work. All right, and so I wanted to highlight this. Some of the reasons those ones caught our eye is because there's a good balance of blank space and there's good spacing between words and letters. You want to focus on having nice lines and borders that clearly show your reader. You're kind of leading your reader through the paper, right? So be nice to them, help them figure out where one section ends, another one begins. You can think about fonts that you want to use on your resume. There's serif, like Times New Roman right here, and those have the little tails or the little feet, whatever you want to call them. They're kind of grounded on the page versus a sans serif like Calibri, which I think this is, or Arial. those ones just kind of end. So on a resume, serif can sometimes just be a little bit easier for our eyes to follow. And then again, think about, you can do a lot to, without going wild and needing to like highlight something in purple or make everything bold and capitalized. Just a nice, easy change of font size for your headers or bold, very selectively used to emphasize an area can be helpful. Italics I would avoid. So that same study actually showed that italics slow down our eyes. So it's a little bit harder for people to read italics when they're trying to skim through something. So using those font sizes or bold to emphasize is a little bit better on the eye. And I'm going to show you an example of one that you can build in Word. Oh, come on. All right. So this Jane Doe is something that we built in Word in our office, and it is catered to an undergraduate student, but I'm going to talk about how you can easily change that. And one thing you'll notice right off the top is that the headers, and a lot of the ones we looked at, the headers go across the top of the page. They use that space, but they only take up 2 lines. Whereas a lot of headers I'll see, we're so used to just putting something right in the middle here, and it takes like 3 or 4 lines to say, who we are and where we live. Most of the time, you don't really need this street address. You can put the city and the state. The street address was very commonly utilized um, when we did not have email, and you were more likely to get a job offer in the mail, right, than you were in your email or a phone call. So city and state will suffice. Absolutely, you can put your education up top. If your education is secondary, and I see that question, I'll get to in a second. If your education is secondary to the requirements, like it's a preferred requirement that you have an MBA, but it's a requirement that you have worked, 2+ years in finance, you might want to go ahead and put your finance work experience and then your education. So you're going to highlight got that. Oh, cool, we have a preferred item as well. Kind of up to you how you want to highlight them. If any of you are helping undergraduates figure this stuff out too, which you may be mentoring them at some point. I know there's are some undergrads in School of Business. Education is going to be your primary, right? That's been an undergraduate's full-time job. Relevant coursework can go for either. I think for those of you finishing School of Business, if there's a certain course or a certain focus that is required for the job, then it would be appropriate. But I think a lot of the time you can work that in. You could put a bullet point here and list some relevant coursework, so you're not taking up as much space with it, because the meat of what you're doing is certainly going to be in your experience. All right, so you can see here education, coursework, office experience. You may have field work or something like that. Leadership experience. Now, this could be all kinds of different things. So we're going to look at some different topics. But what I want to point out is that you see it's just a very well balanced layout. And this is super easy to build in Word. Like it hardly takes any effort. All the dates are over here on the right side. And for GPA, you absolutely do not need your GPA on your resume. If you want to put it there, great. If you're applying for a doctorate program, you might want to include your GPA. If you're really proud of your GPA, you can include your GPA. Typically, we would say if you have a 3.5 or below, don't include it. And if it's something that you really want to highlight, or if it's a requirement of some sort of program or fellowship you might be applying to, then it would be appropriate. And Allison, I saw your hand go up. No, okay.
It's okay. I was just making sure you saw Rosanna's question.
Perfect. Good. Yeah. Yeah, that was a great question too. Oh, one more thing I'll say is right here it lists the place of work followed by the role. I would switch those for you. Your roles are probably going to be more impactful than where you had them, unless perhaps you're applying, I don't know, maybe you worked at Geico before and you want to apply for Geico again and you want to highlight that, they're still going to see it. But I think, I mean, the main emphasis here is your role, what you did. That should stand out. I would say that the same, I'm in favor of putting your program at the top and then our university, so University of Redlands underneath, so that they can glance right away, and instead of highlighting that university, highlighting, okay, the degree, the highest degree that you've earned. That can be a little more eye-catching. Do you need to post the city and state on the right side? You don't need to. You can put it kind of wherever it fits for you. I think this, having the city and state with the dates on the right, just helped kind of balance it a little bit. You could put it down here too, if you're going to have the place. I would put it wherever it really helps balance. And the biggest thing here is be consistent. So however you set it up in this section, follow that through so that your document looks cohesive. And just same with, bullet points at the end of the bulleted list, or sorry, periods at the end of bullet points. And Allison, maybe you have some grammatical insight on that. But from what I can tell, it's kind of up to the person whether a bullet point has a period at the end of the statement or not. I would just say whatever you decide to do, you need to have that same exact thing done on every bullet point.
I agree. It's your choice. What
All right.
the thing is, when I'm looking at resumes, I'm looking for, did this person throw this together, or did this person craft it? Is there a design element? Is this a product? And so is there some consistency? I'm really looking for that in terms of what this is telling me about the candidate.
Perfect. Yeah. You don't want to be the sloppy resume person. All right. So we also want to consider your titles or sections. And again, we talked about education, relevant coursework. I highlighted relevant because that's the word you want to remind yourself of all the time. Work experience, professional organizations. You might have publications that you've been working on, research that you've been doing through the School of Business, different presentations, different leadership roles you might have within a community or professional organization, technical skills you really want to highlight. I do think technical skills and required programs can be embedded in bullet points, and that saves time and space and grounds them in something tangible. Again, that's the show, don't tell. So those things are all possible. And I just wanted to give some thought over here. It doesn't just have to say work or professional experience. You can be very specific and say you've done, you've had an office assistant role, and then, you moved into a more of a management or leadership training role. And then from there, you've really skyrocketed and have all these different things you've done with that leadership training and management. Maybe you've gotten a certification, you've taken an additional course. So you really want to highlight that management experience differently than your office assistant experience. Think about the qualifying word for that title. And maybe you want that to be, project management or leadership. Maybe you want that to be, maybe it's in human resources, right? Just think about human resource management, and then you can delineate that. And then you can have, an office assistant support type role. You can clearly define your different jobs or roles within that title. Another one that we commonly have, right, throughout life is customer service, retail, food service, anything like that. Think of as, how can I highlight transferable skills? That's one that I commonly get a question about. Should I even include this on my resume? I would first of all say, get through the relevant and recent experience first, the most tangible things that relate to where you want to apply. And if you still have space and you are trying to figure out what else is impactful for me to add, figure out what are the transferable skills that you can take from some of the retail or service industry work that you've done, and write those bullet points down so that you have bullet points that support whatever you're applying to. My previous work experience is in outdoor recreation. I have, one or two bullet points on those items. I don't even have all of those items on my resume anymore, but the ones that I do, I look at those bullet points every time and I think, well, what are some of the most relevant things from that job that would support how I can do the job now? And if it's relevant, then I keep it. If not, then maybe it doesn't go on that resume. All right, I have a question. I have a certificate and an AS in business management. Do I need to list both or just put my AS? I would say, I would think about, are they different? So sorry, which one's more recent, right? So like, was the certificate more recent in addition to the associate's degree? If not, I think then you could probably just do the associate's degree.
Can I add something in here?
Allison,
As again,
yeah,
from the
yeah,
business
I would love that.
perspective, if that certificate particularly expands or focuses in on something related to or unrelated in that sense to that associate's degree, it can be really important to include it. So I don't know, let's say you have an associate's degree in business management, but you have a certificate in HR. Then I think it would be
Mm-hmm.
important to any sort of corporate job to particularly include that HR cert in there. If it's a certificate in something that probably would have been dealt with in your associate's degree to begin with, then it's less important, I think. What do you think, Lauren?
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I also think if you end up with a master's degree in business management, then that is going to be your highest level and it's going to hit both of those things, and you no longer would need to list the certificate or the associate's degree. So that's a wonderful and, difficult to keep up with thing about resumes, right? Is they morph and grow all the time, just as we do. Another thing here, and I'll talk about this on another slide, is the best course of action is always to get resume feedback from someone who's in the field. So think about where you want to apply and see if someone who's going to be regularly regularly reviewing that type of resume is willing to take a look at yours. And we do have, tons of alumni connection on LinkedIn, and I'm sure you'd be able to find some folks who would do that. And I think, you have tons of networking opportunities through the School of Business and mentorship opportunities there too. So take advantage of those. All right. And then, I've said this before, you want to make sure that your language has an impact. Your experience is really important, but it is only as important as you can articulate it, right? So you need to be able to say what you mean and make it relevant and make it have an impact. So these are called accomplishment statements. This is essentially going to be your bullet point. And so this is how you can work through it, right? So say this is your role, you're an assistant in the School of Business. Here's when you did it. That's kind of what it looks like on your resume. And this is the bullet point that you start with. Okay, I analyzed data. That's a good start. That is not enough to catch the eye of someone recruiting for a position who, wants this type of experience. So the formula that we talk about in our office that I think is really helpful for this is starting with that responsibility due to your task, and that that would be the analyzed data. So that was your responsibility or your task. And then that needs to, this really should be a plus sign. You need to add more context, and then you need to show the result and outcome or your personal achievement. So here is then, this is a real example from a student we worked with. This is what it started as, and then we asked more questions, and the things you want to think about are, okay, what type of data did you handle? What programs or software did you use for it? And this is the context, right? Who were you analyzing data for? And then what was the goal of that data? And that's the result or the outcome. And those goals can be focused on the organization. So what was the result or outcome that benefited them, that had that great impact? They can also focus on your personal achievements. So maybe you doubled your sales rate, right? Something like that. So after having that conversation position of student, it turned into assistant professor with original research by analyzing data using Excel and SPSS to find correlations between CEO characteristics and ethical decision making. Okay, so now if I'm reviewing a resume, I'm learning so much from this bullet point. I know that you can use Excel and SPSS. I know that you are trusted by a professional faculty member to help with original research. That's huge. And that you're thinking about CEO characteristics and ethical decision making. That is really helpful for business practices. Maybe you're applying for an HR position, and I'm using that just because that one comes to mind really easily. So maybe you're applying for an HR position, and you're actually going to be thinking about who are you hiring for these different positions, and how do ethics play into some of the policies that you might write at a particular job. So hopefully you can kind of see how applying this formula can transform what you did at your job to what impact and meaning does that have. You're giving us specifics. And then honestly, I think that this practice sets you up for success in your interviews and in every step of the process, because you are remembering the specific situations, you're remembering the actions that you took, and most importantly, you're able to articulate the results that were achieved. And your ability to start with what did you do to what results were achieved is that critical thinking component that employers really want to see when you sit down for an interview. So your resume is a great stepping stone for that preparation for the rest of the process. Okay. Yes. This is the content, right? This is like you have a good looking resume, so you walk into your interview and it's like, oh, okay, this person is put together. Right. But what is written down or what comes out of your mouth needs to make sure that it blows them away and shows that you're very qualified. Really, you should think you're the most qualified. All right. You can also consider on each of these, each bullet point should start with a verb. And you want to consider what verbs are going to be most impactful for you. And that should be utilizing the language of the industry that you apply for. So in business, that could be hundreds of different things, but just a couple that you might want to make sure you highlight would be managed, developed, researched, marketed. I should also say these are all past tense. So this would be a previous job that you had. If you're currently in the role, it would say manage, develop, research, or market. So think about those verbs. What are you starting with? And you want them to be varied. So as you look down a page, you should be able to see a whole lot of different verbs. And that shows me right off the bat when I look at those. I'm like, wow, like they're managing, they're creating things, they're researching, they're collaborating. Like those are all great verbs that can ground you in your industry and your abilities. And then especially when you tie those to the results achieved. Here's another thing to think about is using synonyms. So helped is a common one I see, and it's going to be so tempting to be like helped, right? Or for me, mine's all education. So thinking about teaching, right? I can't just say taught, right? I can facilitate, I can teach, I can lead. There are a lot of different ways to think about it. So, utilize those synonyms, look it up on we have a thesaurus at our fingertips with the internet now. So helped could be assisted, supported, aided, right? So for any verb that you're going to use, or if you're repeating a verb, just think about, okay, what else, which one of these versions is going to have the most impact? All right, this is super important. We live in our brains. And therefore, we create these beautiful scripts for ourselves that everything is working. And when you have that script of what you want that bullet point to say in your brain, you're going to read that is what it says on paper. You're going to miss the grammar problems. You're going to miss the spelling errors. You're going to miss the inconsistencies. So it is so important to have other people review your resume. So here are some different ways to do that. You can ask a professor or a mentor for feedback. You can ask a peer to edit. I would always, combo your peer reviews with some other input. Use your networking skills to seek input from someone in the field through one of the programs at School of Business, through LinkedIn, through Alumni Fire, or you could visit the OCPD for review. We're always happy to look those over for you. But again, I would say nothing is more impactful than having someone in the field give you like, hey, this is what we expect and what we look for in our field or at our company. Okay. None of this is linear. Expect turns. Yes, I will put OCBD content in here. I'm going to drop our website because we're going to go there right now. So yeah, so essentially, life is not linear. Job seeking is not linear. Expect turns. This is the banner of our current website. So we're going to come over here and take a look at that for a moment. I just shared that with you. I'll also put our email address, ocpd@redlands.edu. You can always get in touch with us there. And we're actually, if you're on the Redlands campus, we're in Armacost 116. We're open to drop-ins, usually like 12 to 5. Okay, so this is your general banner. We've got a lot of things for students up here. There's some different career communities based around topics. There are some resources based on ways you might identify. And then there are how-to resources here. So if you are later thinking, how do I write a resume and cover letter? You're going to click here, and you're going to be able to review some of the resources that I basically utilize to create my PowerPoint. You're going to be able to review some of our articles here. We write articles, we pull articles from other relevant related resources. This is very specific. 6 steps to making a financial analyst resume that will stand out from the competition, right? So jobs in finance. So there are some great articles here. There are some past video recordings of some different resume workshops that I've done. If you want to learn more about accomplishment statements, one of our peer career educators from last summer did a little like 10, 15-minute deep dive into accomplishment statements. There's a lot there that you can experience, a lot of resources that you can use, some of the essentials, the action. I always laugh when it says action verbs because verb is inherently an active word. So verbs to start your resume, some different thoughts there. And then on any page, you're going to see this banner to book a session in the Career Studio. This is going to take you to Handshake. Every student at University of Redlands has a Handshake on your My Redlands portal in your, the same place you would get to Outlook for email or Moodle. You'll see a spot for Handshake. The first time you log on, you do have to set up a little bit of your profile there. Alumni do have ways to utilize Handshake, yes. And if you are already in the system, it's pretty easy. If you haven't built one, you can build a new portfolio. But if you are an alumni and you have any questions about booking a session with us, then I would just email ocpd@redlands.edu and we'll make sure that you get all squared away. So when scheduling an appointment, especially virtual, you would select your, who you are, school business students or alumni. And I just made it really simple. There's one option because it asks you what you'd like to work on. Now, this is going to show you all of our opportunities. If you know you need virtual, you're going to go to virtual, and then you're going to see the virtual opportunities here. What is cool about this is that it is all through Handshake now. So there's no extra link to remember. You just log on to Handshake. It'll show you your appointment coming up. You would click it and you click a button and you join a video right through Handshake. So you'll see most days, not all days, but most days we do have virtual opportunities. If the times don't work, right, then again, just get in touch with our office and we'll find a time that does for you. It is certainly challenging to find time in busy working schedules to book this kind of session. And then on my end, it's really challenging to make sure that those all line up with our staff members' schedules. But we are happy to make it work for you. So anything you need, just let us know. And then,
Lauren,
okay,
there's a question
we're
in the chat.
Oh, great. What's the question?
I may have missed the title, but I didn't see an option for School of Continuing Studies. Should I just pick School of Business?
Great question. You know what? I would say if you book that sometime today or in the rest of the week, go ahead and put um, School of Business, and I will add continuing studies because I don't think that we have that on there. And then a handshake session, it's a session with our office, so it can be anything career and professional related that you would like to go over. So like once you book an appointment, you basically it says what can we help you with? And if you want a resume review, if you want to talk about interview strategies, you can let us know. Kind of the sky's the limit on that one. The only one that we would schedule separately is a mock interview. We do offer those, and I think they're incredibly valuable opportunities. Those essentially are um, basically scheduled with me. So there's no easy way to do that online. I will just work with you to find a time for a mock interview. However, you should know as well when you explore our website, one of our resources is called Standout. So, how to prepare for an interview. And we've got a ton of resources. A lot of them are very expensive if you try to use them on their own, but we pay for them for you to have access. So, please use them. Standout right here, interview practice. It's a virtual mock interview platform. And so this would take you to it. It's a single sign-on with your University of Redlands information. And you'll kind of find your way through, click the practice zone, and you'll see a lot of pre-recorded kind of groupings of internships, groupings of types of interviews, some of which are for internships. And then full-time jobs, general questions catered to specific businesses. You can also build your own practice. So if you know you're getting ready for a particular type of job interview, there's hundreds of questions to choose from that you can practice. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see in the last few minutes here if we have any other questions.